What is
Hello,
today? What's
everybody.
happening?
What is
Hi.
happening? So, first of all, I'm TJ. This is Alyssa. Work as developer advocates at Progress. And why don't I bring up my screen here? Which button do I want? I think I want this button. So, we're doing something at Progress. We are doing a Hack for Good challenge. This is a hackathon. We are going to be launching this tomorrow. And around it, we're doing a bunch of streams like you're watching today. And this site will be soon live. And I'm told if you want to learn more, you can follow our social accounts. So Progress on like Twitter, Facebook, and such if you want to learn more. But there's a handful of streams. Alyssa and I will be around for more. You'll see that this is the first one on the list today. And these will all be recorded. So you might be watching this right now in the future and checking this out, which is great. So if you miss any of these, you'll be able to check them out. But all this is around hacking for good. And we're trying to introduce you to a number of technologies to help you do that, more or less.
So this hackathon, can you explain a little bit more about how people enter? What's it about? Because I'm pretty sure the floodgates open tomorrow, right? It's on Wednesday.
The floodgates
April
open tomorrow,
7th.
and there's going to be a whole site around that. So I think like the Progress software Twitter is probably what I'd recommend to people to get announcements of that, because we'll be launching it there. So it's Progress SW, which the 3 S's always annoys me a little bit because I always type this thing wrong.
But the hackathon, we do have a theme of the Worthy Web Hack for Good. And so I know that all of the different challenges with the hackathon, because there's different ways to enter, different technologies and products that you can use during the hackathon, and then there will be different prize categories. And so I think there's even going to be a page that like the dev advocates brainstormed on ideas for how to get started or different app ideas that you could build out. So I think I'm really excited about this one.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. And actually, that's a good way of framing this, because one of the categories is best use of KendoReact, which is a product we have here at Progress. So if you're interested in this hackathon, if you're interested in just trying to build something for good, it's a Hack for Good hackathon. You might want to try KendoReact to do it, because KendoReact can help you build web applications with React really fast. And that's sort of what we're going to be covering here today over the next hour or so. Is basically KendoReact is one of the prize categories for this hackathon. So we thought we'd give you a basic introduction to it.
Maybe you're super comfortable in React, but you've never used KendoReact. So this should help you be a perfect primer, whether you're watching live with us and posting questions or watching it afterwards, for you to enter the hackathon in that category. So it's going to be great.
Yeah. And along those lines too, basically today, this is going to be really informal. I work on the KendoReact team, so I'm going to be showing a little bit off of how KendoReact works, but really we can take this any direction we want to go. So Alyssa is more of an Angular person on our Angular team, so I know she's roughly familiar with how this works, but has some questions as well. So we're just going to play it by ear. We can hack on, we can show anything you in chat want to see, and we'll just go from there.
For announcements regarding the hackathon and other cool tweets, at Telerik or at KendoUI. It looks like it was what Ivana will be using. So check out those channels.
Sounds good. All right. So Alyssa, what do you know about KendoReact?
Well, I know that it's similar to Kendo Angular. So that means that it is a component library that's created in React for React. And I know that there's a lot of component like parity between the two, but there are also differences. Like for instance, there are some components that you have that I'm jealous of that we don't have yet in Angular. So, and I know that it's very, at least from the JavaScript ecosystem, it's plug and play as far as, npm install commands, or you can just, there's even some parts of it, at least I think, that work like Angular, where let's say you've got some form components installed, like an input or something, but you don't have the buttons installed. You can still use the button styles, but not the functionality, because you have the theme installed. So I think you can just like throw the classes on there. So does it work the same way as
Yeah. And I think like one of the things I like about our components, and this applies to React and Angular as well, is they're components that are built from the ground up for these technologies. So they're not like jQuery components that we're wrapping, or they're not like plain JavaScript that we just toss like a hacked together React or Angular APIs on top of. They're built like directly from the ground up with React or Angular. And I think that's really cool when you go to start using them, because it means all the APIs feel like APIs that React developers would want, or that Angular developers would want. And I think you'll see that as we start building some things.
No, I've definitely, as I've dove deeper and deeper into the Angular side of our components, just been amazed at that exact aspect of how it's definitely, you can tell this is an Angular developer through and through. And I think the same is on the React team, where they're in it every day and they're living it and they're writing for it. So love it.
And like you said, there are a lot of components here, right? There's a lot you can do. And I think that's honestly what's compelling about the framework, is because if you search like React date picker, it's not like we've got the only React date picker out there. There are probably literally hundreds of them, right? So I would say the reason that I think Kendo UI, and talking about React, so KendoReact specifically, stands out is sort of the comprehensiveness of the product. Because if you just get a random date picker, then you have to worry about, well, how is my dropdown? Is it going to look like the random date picker? And then I'm also going to need to grab a dialog. And if you grab 6 or 7 of these things from throughout the web, all of a sudden you have this challenge of like, I'm using 5 different APIs and I've got 6 different styles going on, and like fidgeting with CSS to try to make these third-party components look like they belong together is, I know I've went down that path before. And
I mean, customizing components in general can be a nightmare, because I was personally brought on to a project to rip out Bootstrap and to write our own custom styles. And we came to that decision because of how many custom components and custom elements we had to build, and how aggressive Bootstrap was being with its generic styles. And so anytime we wanted to do anything, we had to be insanely specific, and it was just the biggest headache, and it wasn't very reusable. And so I was super skeptical at first. I've been with the Kendo UI team for 3 years now, and I have just grown to absolutely fall in love with is how customizable our components are. We don't have any like general like CSS generics out there to like gotcha. And something that I love is, as you start to customize our components, you'll notice the consistency across components. So as TJ was saying, if you pull in one and then you pull in another, not only do they like have this consistency between each other, but then as you like want to retheme or you want to add on a little pizzazz, it's easier. It really is. So
yeah, for sure. So what do we can just start building with some of them. I should mention too that like I think there's like the comprehensiveness of the library, but also like some of these components are almost like products in and of themselves. Like the grid is absolutely epic. There's a scheduler, which is like building an Outlook calendar in your browser. There's a full charting library.
The grid counts as one component.
Yeah, it's
the features. She's thick. I'm like, there's at least 5 in there.
This thing should be like red and like blinking and like
the blink
3 times the size. Yeah.
Oh, but what do you want to? I know you said you wanted to leave it up to the audience as far as what we pull in today. Do you have a default like demo app that we're pulling in, or are you spinning up a new one? What are your thoughts?
We can take this in any direction, because really the cool thing about KendoReact is you can use as little or as much of it as you want. So if you want to go all in, you think all of your every app, every little bit should be written with KendoReact, like great. If you just want to use the grid, you can pick and choose it. So, or really anywhere in between. And really, I like just bringing up this getting started page, because I think it just spells out the simplest way of getting started. And it's basically step 1, you need a React app. It's KendoReact. So you just need an app that has React in it, right? Pretty simple.
Yeah.
And we could do these alongside. So I set up, just so we didn't have to watch everybody npm install. This is the world's simplest npm, or I should say create React app. So I just did npx create React app worthy web, and then just did the npm install so that we wouldn't have to sit here and watch it. But it's quite literally hello world. So we have a blank slate. So that's setting up the React project. Step 2 is you need our styles, our themes. So like we were talking earlier, one of the benefits of using Kendo just in general is that your components look the same, and the themes are how you do that. And so we have 3 different themes that actually span all of Kendo UI. So you can use these with Angular, with Vue, with jQuery. And it's the default theme, the Bootstrap theme, and the material theme.
I'm pushing for a unicorn theme, just in case anybody.
A unicorn theme?
I just across all products, you slap it in, and there's just rainbows galore, some sparkles. I don't know. It needs to happen.
We'll get it on the roadmap, right?
Salt, hey, welcome, and Rick, hi. Salt asks, what are we doing today? And I noticed our numbers are going up. So just as a reintroduction to our stream, today is the first worthy web stream where TJ is showing off KendoReact. I'm here to ask questions. And we're launching our hackathon, Hack for Good, tomorrow. And one of the categories that you can win prizes in is in KendoReact. So this is perfect primer if you're going to fall into that category. So
yeah. So any questions you have about KendoReact or honestly Kendo UI in general, just bring them up. And we're just sort of making this up as we go. And we were talking about how for KendoReact, if I can find the page I was on, using it is basically you set up a React app, you bring in some CSS, you bring in some components. So for the CSS, there's 3 different themes. And there's also something we call Theme Builder. So Theme Builder is basically a way you can take one of our existing themes and tweak it a little bit to get it ready for your app. Mm-hmm. And I was just going to bring this up to show the different themes. I don't know, Alyssa, do you have a favorite? Is there one that you think we should use, or just chat have a big one?
Okay, well, it's never Bootstrap. I love our default theme, and I will often actually swap over to Material if I'm feeling spicy. So you got to ask yourself, TJ, are you feeling spicy this morning?
I think so. We can do Material, right?
Yeah, Rick said a Nyan cat. I can't even talk today. Theme, and yeah, that would be.
Have you ever seen the Geocities theme online?
Oh God, no! I need to see this.
So hopefully this is still up on the internet. Yeah. So this is a Bootstrap theme. Like, this is legit, right? So some amazing person on the internet built this, and like these are actual, right? Like, yeah. So like these are actual functioning things. Just built with the Bootstrap. I love the star background. That's actually one of my favorites. So this is a fun thing to Google. So basically what I'm saying is, like, this needs to be in Theme Builder as well, right?
You just inspired me. I'm doing a workshop for NGConf coming up this month, and it's like around UI and just like diving into the Tour of Heroes app and kind of getting people comfortable with theming. And I was like, man, maybe like my demo should be taking that theme with Kendo UI and marrying it. Like,
yeah,
that was beautiful, TJ. Thank you.
Unfortunately, we do not have the Bootstrap theme or the Geocities theme in. Yeah, that.
Yet, I think you meant to say yet.
Yeah, exactly. So on the theme builder, you can see all the components. Actually, because there's so many, sometimes it takes a long time to load. So we can actually just start using them locally. So we wanted to use Material. So I am going to, I'm going to have to install this thing. So let's go back to our project. And we will npm install Kendo theme Material, because we will need that locally. And
Yvonne is cracking me up.
I think when you use the Material theme, there is also a font that you need from Google to make things look
Oh.
Roboto.
That's why sometimes I literally just slap on. I just slap on the extra link that points to material.
Oh yeah.
But I never point to a different font.
Well, because it's
And
not.
sometimes,
It'll look mostly right because the font's
it will.
not totally essential. So if you're trying to keep your app as slim as possible, I don't think it's necessary. Or there's some alternatives you can use. But if you really want the true
Look and feel of our material theme. Yeah, I just feel silly because I'm like, oh yeah, I totally missed that step.
yeah.
Thanks, TJ.
Well, we really should actually. So we should have it in these steps, honestly, because it's one of the 3 options. So, but you install it and then you add it to your app. So let's put it in here, and we use materials. So I got to swap that in. And at this point, the CSS step is done. So I need this theme. This theme applies to all of KendoReact. I'm using all. There's docs on if you want to be, so the themes under the hood are implemented with Sass. So if you are in like a production situation and you want to get very specific, if you want to manage like specifically what CSS comes in, or if you want to customize Sass variables, that's an option. But since this is a brief introduction to KendoReact for simple apps you're building, especially for the purposes of like a hackathon, the easiest thing is just to just toss it all in there because that's just going to ensure everything works.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you're like, I don't know what I'm going to need. Once you get down to the point where like, I'm using these 3 components, I think that's a good time to go back and change what you're importing. So,
yeah. Or like when you're, honestly, I think it's like when you're getting ready for production, like, because this is a big style sheet, right? Because as you might imagine, like the code to theme every one of, where's our component list? These things, like there's a decent amount of CSS here, and which during development, great, like no problem. But for production, you probably want to get a little bit more granular and be a little bit more selective, because unless you are building that app that uses every one of these, and if so, let us know.
That would be so impressive. I think you just win a prize just automatically. Like you
should
you used every single one.
have a checklist on your desk. Find a way to bring them all in.
Okay, can you show me how easy it is to just throw in like a component?
Yeah,
because right now, pick one.
Which ones do you have a favorite? Maybe start with like a simpler one, and like we'll do like a simpler one first, and then we'll go more complex.
I don't know what you count as simple, but I was going to say one of the form components, like one of the inputs, is I usually just they're my go-to because they're so like forms, right? Like everyone needs a form.
Yeah, and actually, I could do like a brief. Forms is actually a good place to start. I could just show how our entire sort of form library works as part of Kendo. So let's do that. But first, let's just drop something in randomly, right? Like I don't know, like a date picker, right? Like that's, I feel like that's form library 101. So what I did is I went to the documentation. So here's the docs for KendoReact. And what I really like about our documentation, and this is true for Angular as well, is it's very demo driven. Like there are a ton of these embedded samples that show off how these components work and how they work in all different sort of scenarios. So this is like the default date picker, but you can see a lot of different things that you can do. Some of the accessibility supports, if you want placeholders, if you want like custom rendering, like you want to mark certain dates as special in here, if you want to disable certain dates, these are all things that you can do. But when you're just getting started, like we are here, and you just want the most basic example, the first thing you got to do is install these components. And actually, I thought it was going to be on this page, but maybe it's back on the overview. Actually, I don't see the npm thing here.
So people who are used to like UI and CSS and theming, they might be like, why are you installing something? We already imported all. So can you explain the difference between importing the CSS and installing the component?
Yeah, so the themes are basically a theme applies to the entire, actually it applies to all of Kendo UI. So this Kendo theme material, also Kendo theme default, Kendo theme bootstrap. And within that, you could then, there are SAS files in there. So you could get down to the individual components and import just the CSS for like the date input or the date picker from within that CSS package. The actual component packages, so the actual JavaScript, TypeScript implementations happen in these other packages. So in this case, it's going to be KendoReact data inputs. And the reason that, oops, I need to actually npm install it. And the reason we do this is again, like sort of modularity, because we know that there's a lot of code in Kendo UI. Like we do a whole lot, like the comprehensiveness is part of our offering, but we don't want your apps to be like 50 megabytes when you ship them to your users. So that's why they're segmented into logical packages. Yeah. And actually, I should also mention too, that this is one of the cool reasons about these things being built just from the ground up, is that it also means that things like tree shaking and some of these processes that are built into the build processes for things like React and Angular tend to work really well with KendoReact, because it's React all the way down. So it's the parts that you're not using tools like Webpack can sort of shake out of your bundles to keep things lean.
Well, and people might be thinking at this point, what are you talking about? We just installed the date picker. We need the date picker. So it might be a good time to talk about the umbrellas. At least in Kendo UI for Angular, they are they're packaged sometimes together. So you might install this package and it has these components in it.
Yep, it's the same. It's going to be the same thing for KendoReact. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and just go ahead and bring this in. The date inputs, and usually, so the nice thing about VS Code is you can find everything that's in here, and some of these are these aren't all like full components. Like some of these are just, especially if you're using TypeScript, like having the types on the specific props. We should also mention that too. KendoReact is built with TypeScript. It fully supports TypeScript, which means if you are using TypeScript, which I'm not in this app to keep things simple, but you get a lot of the nice code help for things like that. But it does mean that when you install the date inputs, you have a number of different things that you can use. But then you also have the tree shaking, so that if you're not using these things like Webpack will be smart enough to kick them out of your bundle when you do your production builds. Did that help? Alyssa, I might have lost your audio.
Hey, sorry.
Oh, there we go. You're just over
here yelling on. Rick asked a question that kind of revolves around. No, that totally helps, is what I was saying. But then also, Rick saying, does the current version of Kendo need jQuery? And as TJ was saying, I wanted you to kind of go into this a bit more about how we're like using TypeScript and React, or we're using TypeScript and Angular to build it. So no, unless you're using Kendo UI for jQuery. And that was what I think is the right answer, but I'll have TJ go further.
Yeah, no jQuery. So they're just built from React all the way up and down. Like Alyssa said, though, we do have Kendo UI for jQuery. So if you are a jQuery person, that's available too. That's sort of one of the benefit of
doesn't jQuery have the most components out of?
jQuery has a lot, but jQuery's also been around for like a decade. So it's
that's true. That's true. We'll catch up one day.
So we have the date picker, and I'm pretty sure using this is, I can't remember the exact API, but I think you just do this, right? I'm pretty sure that's how that works. And let's just see if that works.
I'm like, I just want you to start the app, TJ. Just start it. Oh, I want to see how beautiful it is.
Hopefully it's pretty.
I know, right? It's always this moment. Oh my God.
There you go.
Look at that. Did you have an H1 though, or no?
I killed the H1.
Oh, okay.
I can throw it back in.
I was like, what happened? I gotcha. I'm with you.
What's the emoji? Oh, like I feel like this emoji is. Right?
I started using Rocket. It's the app you're using right now, right? To throw in emojis.
Oh yeah.
I started
It's so
using it.
nice.
It's great for things like VS Code, but for some things that have their own, like they're already listening for the colon, and then you get the double pop
So
up.
for I use a tool called Rocket, and
Mm.
it basically gives you. Let me see if I can drag it over. Oh no, it's not going to be on my other monitor, but it basically lets you on a Mac type things like this and toss emoji in anywhere,
Mm.
and it's super useful. And you actually can disable it in certain apps, so you
Oh, you
can
can?
say,
Oh
yeah.
my god, that's what I've been missing.
So you could say like in Slack and Teams, like don't
Don't
do
do it
this.
because they have their own. Oh, TJ. Yes.
So if you
Sorry.
get one thing out of this,
Oh god. Well, that and the fonts thing, I'm learning so much.
but
Oh,
hey, like look, we have a date picker, and we have a
okay.
like a
Can you
material-y date picker, right?
can you copy the import that says Kendo theme material and change it to Kendo theme default? Yeah. And then you like just reload and like will it
Yeah,
just is that
it will. I have to install the thing though. So let me. I mean, we could do it with
import.
Bootstrap too. Maybe that will burn your eyes, but
I don't care. I just want to show the different themes like in our app changing. Like
yeah.
I'll see the beauty of it all.
And really, I think this is what's so cool about KendoReact. And I think like KendoReact is especially well suited to a hackathon because, I mean, this is like nothing special in this app whatsoever. And all I did was I pick a theme, you import a component, and you use the component, right? Like it really is that simple. And it's that simple with simple things. Like the date picker is quite simple, but I think in a minute we'll look at some of the more complex ones. And obviously the APIs get a little bit more involved because you're doing something a little bit more involved, but it's the same process works and it really is that simple to do. Okay, so that is material. So you wanted to see default. So I just got to save this.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't have to like restart your
No. And so I'm back to
Yeah.
default.
Okay.
I am a material person. Like it's at first I kind of didn't like it, but it's kind of grown on me. I like the colors.
Yeah. Rick said still missing the unicorn theme. I'm gonna tell you that it's gonna be my big push. Like when they come to me and they say, Alyssa, what do you want most? This is what I'm gonna say the people require a unicorn theme because I think it's needed. But this is great. I love how easy it is to switch between the themes. And we can show Bootstrap. Honestly, our Bootstrap theme is great because I know a lot of teams use Bootstrap. So if you want to use one of our components like our grid and you want to throw on the Bootstrap theme, you have that guarantee of consistent look and feel.
Yeah, and I know like both Alyssa and I have our qualms with Bootstrap, but at least for me, it's not the visuals, right? Like I think Bootstrap looks nice.
No,
So
it's just the specificity. It's got its grubby little noodle paws on everything. But no,
uh,
it's great for a lot of teams because I know it helps a lot of teams get going fast. It just if you ever come across a project that's been there for a long time, oftentimes it's going to need custom work done, and that's where the fun comes in.
um, one thing actually, I don't know why that made me think of this, but one
What?
thing that we should point out is that accessibility is a big part of what we do as well. And
Mm.
so, for example, like I'm just using my keyboard, no mouse, right? And I'm able to open this thing to like move around on the keyboard. I can select a date, open this back up. I know that you can feel confident with using KendoReact that the various screen readers that you may need to support for whatever it is you're building, especially if you work in something like government, insurance, banking, those sort of industries. It's a nice sort of I don't know. It's a nice comfort to know that you are covered from that perspective
Yeah.
as well.
Can you actually pull up our docs? Because each section of our docs should have an accessibility tab. And this can like go into a little bit further of because I know we have like API reference for the date picker where you can if you need to add on a certain something for let's say your company is using a specific screen reader or something that's missing. But TJ's right. It's great because it's out of you saw it was literally an npm install line and then he threw it in the template, and it comes with that. So if you've ever built it from scratch, you know what you're seeing is powerful.
Yes. Well, especially for some of this advanced stuff, because like there are a lot of people out there, like they could probably build an accessible button, an accessible input. But once you start to get into like date picker is like hard, and then you get into like data grid sort of thing.
Well,
and then you get to like crazy town in terms of supporting some of this stuff.
So honestly, like the best, like something that Salt's told me before and that others have told me, the best thing that you can do for accessibility, which is so impressive for a library of this size, is to keep it clean. If you're using clean, like the cleanest, most semantic HTML, then you might not even need as like YARIA tags, because you're using the hierarchy that should be used and you don't have this clutter. And so the fact that like it's working the way it should is it's impressive.
Yeah.
So
you mentioned forms, Alyssa. Should we build like a simple form out of this as a next step? Would that be fun?
Yes. I want to see some inputs and some buttons. Oh, I love it.
Inputs and buttons.
And I'm excited to see the difference between Angular and React too. Just like how you React.
Yeah. So I'm probably going to start with like, just to show you what KendoReact is actually doing for you. I'll start with like a no library form in React, just so we can see what it looks like. So let's say, what do we need to collect? We need like, we'll just keep things like simple, right? I need a first name, last name from someone.
Yes.
And so that's probably like, you probably build your form.
I love it. I love it. The label wrap and the input. It's so true.
Yeah. Well, this is like, your stupidest. And then in React, so React, the downside of forms in React is that they can be, if you're just using like what's built into React, it gets quite verbose. So you need something to store each of these values. So we have a first name and a last name. So we're going to create some state for that.
So this use state, I know, stupid questions off the gate. Is this like React has like a global state that you're accessing for your application? No.
So it is not global. It is specific to this component. Okay. So this component has a piece of state called first name and last name. And these functions are setters. And basically the reason you have setters is that's React's sort of hook to know it needs to re-render this, like something has changed, I need to do a re-render. So you can almost think of these though like variables and ways of changing the variables. Like that's sort of the easiest way of thinking about this.
Is it kind of like two-way binding? Like anything that needs to be sent back and forth, like live updating, needs to have this setter?
Yeah, but without the actual like watcher for the two-way binding, right? It's because like old school AngularJS, right, would just know a variable changed. And so obviously like that created performance problems at scale, which is why Angular moved away from it. Same thing with React. It's not like true two-way binding in terms of, well, okay, it's two-way binding, but it's not like there's no watcher, because that's sort of why these sets exist as a way of just changing the actual thing that gets rendered down here. Okay. So just to show you what this looks like. So if I have my first name, I also need a way of changing it. So I say when this value changes, I have to set the first name with e dot, and it'll be target that value. And then for my last name, I need to do the same thing. I need to say last name.
Now, is anybody from the React community going to come at you for this?
I mean, maybe.
I just mean, like, if I were doing this in Angular, they'd be like, why are you doing all that in your template, girl? And then they'd be like, take the logic out of the template. So I'm just wondering, like, is this is okay? Like you can ship this?
This is fine. Yeah. Like, obviously, like, so where I'm building to is that this gets fairly verbose and unmaintainable once you get beyond, like in this case, I would say like, if this is all your form actually is, like, this is totally fine, because someone could go in here. This is 30 lines of code. This is totally reasonable. The problem is when you scale up from this, but we're going to keep things simple for this. So we'll handle submit.
And then are you going to like hook in the button, or it just knows that the button is doing
The
that?
The button will be type submit by default. So, so basically I just need something that what's the prevent default, right?
Default?
And then we'll alert first name.
I'm so
first
excited.
name.
You're going to see the first name.
I know this is riveting stuff, right?
No, it really is cool to see the differences. I love it. Okay, so alert, first name, last name.
I should blow up the font
But
size
you
of
still
this.
didn't set the button to type of. Do you not have to? I'm confused.
You
Why
don't
does
have
the
to,
button know?
because the default is this, right?
Okay.
So I don't actually need to type that. It's just going to work.
And then first name. Yeah, there it is.
So this works, but the downside of this is that you can see how like I had to type quite a bit of sort of boilerplate code to make this happen. And your real world forms that you're actually building are, I'm going to go out on a limb and say they're probably more complex than this, that there's a lot going on. You need validation. Like React has no built-in way of handling form validation, for example. Like there's just nothing there. And I mean, you can roll your own, but that gets messy. It gets to be a hassle. So because of that, with KendoReact, we have a form library to help you out with this sort of thing. And so to use that, again, there's a whole forms section is part of the KendoReact docs. And again, the docs are very demo driven. So you can see, I mean, you can go crazy, right? It's forms. So there's all sorts of
Stack Blitz. Am I right?
Yeah, these are all live examples too, just in case. So if you wanted to run this out in StackBlitz, which is just an online environment for rendering these apps, you can try them here. So you can play around with them here. You can tweak them. You can share them with coworkers, your boss, whoever. So you can use this environment as a way of like tinkering before to work this into your local environment. So that's a fun thing to experiment with as well. But for this example, I need this thing, just this import. And I might have already.
I was like, did we install that? Did we get
I can't remember if it's like a dependency of this. We'll just see if it yells at us, it yells at us, right?
I love it.
And I think let's just wing it. So instead of lowercase form, we're now using uppercase form because we're using KendoReact, and it wants an on submit. So we've already got that. We might have to change that a little bit. And it also wants this render, which is weird looking, but this is a somewhat common pattern in the React world. Take a render function, and what we need to do is move. We could either throw this as a div. I think there's a.
The way you said that, I just like my brain launched into this song of take a render function, put it in your pocket, never let it fade away. And I was like, why are we doing this? I thought I would impart what you just did to my brain. So yeah, here you go.
When we need a crossover between like children's songs and
you don't
JavaScript
even know.
frameworks.
I moved states last weekend with my 2-year-old. You don't even know how much Coco Melon I listened to, okay? All right, you're lucky I even know my own name anymore, so.
Anything that'll keep the 2-year-old quiet, though. Like, right? I'd put it on repeat, blast the volume.
Literally. There's this, I don't know why, but there's this one vegetable song that was like his jam, and he would always calm down when the vegetable song was on. And I was like looping that thing, like...
So there was I was listening to a podcast that was talking about just stories about Steve Jobs. And one of the stories someone brought up is one of the people that worked with him for a lot of press events just knew that he absolutely hated press events, right? He just was cranky. He never liked to do them. And so she knew that he liked Michael Jackson quite a bit. So she would just play, like bring like a boombox, right? This is back in the day, and just like play Michael Jackson music in the background when she saw him getting cranky, because she could see it visibly improving his mood. And it's just a fun story. So like I think some of this applies to adults too, right?
I'm sorry, but I need someone to follow me around with a boombox, just not Coco Melon. Oh my gosh. Raptai, I can't even. Raptai said there's a whole podcast dedicated to people sharing stories with Steve Jobs. Yeah, what's this podcast?
It was, let me see if I can find it.
Sorry, I'm totally derailing you. I promise to focus from here on out.
I only listened to part of it. Let me see if I can. Jobs stories. I can share this with chat. Yeah, here we go. So I got a link for you. All right. There we go. If you want some Steve Jobs stories, that's where I got that one from. Worth checking out.
Also, if you're tuning in on one of our other channels, welcome. We're currently streaming to Facebook, Twitch, and is that it? Or just two? Just Facebook and Twitch, I think.
I think Facebook and Twitch, yeah.
So welcome.
And Talia TV said Formic is a good package for handling forms. Yep. Formic solves, I'll explain why what we're doing with KendoReact is somewhat different. Formic is excellent. It sort of also makes up for the fact that React itself doesn't really do anything for handling forms.
So like Formic's something you bring in to like help with validation or what?
Just helping really just write forms in general. So it's actually like what we're doing with KendoReact is somewhat similar and somewhat different. So let me finish this, and then I think it'll make a little bit more sense. Okay. So we've got our form, and what I'm going to do is say, instead of this first name, I'm going to use a field. So this is from KendoReact, and I have to pass this thing a name. So this will be first name, and I also need a component for this thing. So I will use just the built-in KendoReact input.
So we're inside the render function, and we weren't before. Why do we need to be now?
Because this is a KendoReact form. This isn't the browser's form. Okay. And so this render is just the way this works. And the reason for this is it's kind of hard to see with this example, but these things will make handling validation easier. So if you look over here, like there's a way of doing things like you can disable the submit button if the person has errors. There's some other there's some other little helper things in here.
Okay, that makes sense.
And this approach sort of gives you access to this. And actually, I believe, if I remember correctly, so we'll have to do the same thing for last name, but I believe the rest of this can just go away, including all of this.
Wait, really?
Yeah, and then
even
this.
The headers? I feel like you'd still need to talk to your state or something.
So, so we'll see if this actually works, but I need to bring in my input, and I think that's, we'll see if I can get it first try. So I need input from @progress, it's just KendoReact. It's just inputs. Yeah, and we'll save this and we'll just see if it works, and we'll go from there. So is my app running or did I kill it? Yeah, so now I have my first name, I type TJ, I hit submit, and I get first name TJ. So this is something, and Formic does something similar with this, where it basically just handles the messier parts of this for you. So like the state management, and we can clean this up a little bit, right? Because we said last name as well. So we could do last name. We could make this a KendoReact button so that this just looks a little bit nicer.
And your like labels are all rolled in. Oh, that's so cool. Because it's just a property. You just say label equals.
Yeah, and I just need the KendoReact button, progress, Kendo.
What if you wanted to do something super fancy? Is there like an ng template type situation where you can go in and do a custom label? Is that a thing?
Yeah, so the way that would work is, so right now I'm saying I want this component rendered as just a straight up KendoReact input. But
Yes.
what you can do is you can pass in something custom here. So you can, and I'll show some examples of this in a second, but if you wanted total control over the rendering, you just pass in something custom there. And it can be something that wraps the KendoReact input. So it's sort of designed so that the easy scenario is like this simple. You just say, just render this as a KendoReact input, but then you still have the flexibility that if you really do need some specific way of rendering this, that's an option as well. And I also wanted to handle, because we were talking about Formic. So Formic does something very similar to this. It makes just state management, these things a lot easier. But what KendoReact will also do is our stuff integrates with our more advanced components. So because Formic is just a form library, we're just a complete sort of UI component library for React. So if you also needed like a super important date out of here, so super important date, then I could also say my component should be the date picker. And I think, so obviously I need to fix the CSS of this, but I could that easily then have my form, put in my name, put in my date, and I get all of that in there that easily. And so you could also do this with the date picker, KendoReact. I mean, we have dropdowns, like custom dropdowns, all sorts of crazy custom dropdowns. We have autocompletes. What else do you toss in a form, Alyssa? I feel like there's more. Checkboxes, custom checkboxes, custom radio buttons.
Yeah, I was gonna say like radio buttons are everywhere for some reason. And do you guys have?
Oh yeah, these things like steppers. Oh, there's a whole, so text areas, color pickers, sliders.
I was gonna have you do like a phone number next, so that might be cool because there's like a lot of masking fun with numbers sometimes, like. But yeah, definitely. So if you wanted just a plain input, plain Jane input, you do what we just did, right? Because like first name, that's pretty. But then if you want like a phone number, do you use the same? What's different between the two?
You would basically do a, so let's see, we have our inputs, and let's bring in the masked one, masked text box. So we also need a phone number now, right? So field phone number, label equals phone number, and our component, and actually I think it might not work straight off the bat because I need a way of passing the mask through. And I think I need one extra bit of code to make that happen, but let's see what happens. Oh, there. What do you know? It just works. I didn't think that was going to work, actually.
Yeah, so the masks,
you get surprised, right?
The masks always threw me off. So I don't know if you can show. I know we're running out of time. I don't know if you can show in the docs where it talks about the different like things you can pass that mask to let it know what to render or what to accept, right? Isn't there?
Yeah, because it gets into like full. You get into
really
like full
cool
objects, right?
Yeah, it's really, really cool. I was blown away when I started digging in. I was like, oh, this is more than just, right there, where it's like, it's more than just numbers, right? Like, I love this. It's so cool. And it just shows you how rich our components are. Because you look and you're like, oh, it's a number input, but like it's so much more.
Yeah. Well, and I'll also point out too that if speaking of accessibility, this is like, in my opinion, one of the absolute hardest things to make accessible because like how do you to do this. So this is another one where it's nice to have a framework that takes care of a lot of that stuff for you.
Rick is asking for
autocomplete dropdowns and selects.
That has autocomplete.
Yeah, so there is. I think the only problem is there's so many inputs that sometimes.
Yeah. Be more specific.
Well,
yeah, there. Oh, yeah.
I clicked something wrong, but that's okay.
Dropdowns are under. Aren't they under their own package? Yeah.
They do have their own package. Okay.
I was like, they're their own entity because there's so many of them. Like you think, oh, it's a dropdown, but there's so many different. There's like 5 or something different types of dropdowns, I think, or maybe different variants or something.
Yeah. So here's like your default, like what I think the most conventional autocomplete is, but that's just like getting started. So there's also the combo box, which the combo box is sort of like both, right? You get an autocomplete, but then you also get the dropdown.
When I got so excited for the combo box when it was released, and I melded it into one of our other components, and then they're like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I want to use all of the things together at once." But no, I really do like that combo box.
Well, and then there's also everybody's favorite, the multi-column combo box, which is basically like you can throw a grid in here.
It's like you have a table's amount of information that you need to search through and select from, and it saves up UI space because it gets sucked into your little input. But when it expands, it's got basically as much information or as little as you need to provide. So it's
this one to me is super useful because I've needed this in apps before, because there are times where like I need you to pick an option from a list, but I need to also show you additional information to help you make that selection, sort of thing. So
I'm gonna just totally butcher this name, so I'm gonna let you do it, TJ. Somebody is asking how accessible are these elements, and they just joined the stream.
Okay.
So I didn't know if you could talk about that again.
Yeah.
X is fine.
X, yeah. Yeah, so accessibility is really important to everything we do with Kendo, just Kendo UI in general, and KendoReact. So there's an accessibility section for each different component that sort of lays out exactly our approach to this. So it's important to us. A lot of our users and our customers are in government, banking, basically industries where this is a necessity, not a nice to have. So it is it's very important to what we do. And like I said, there's a documentation article for every component that walks through sort of our approach.
Bye, Rick. And then,
Thanks, Rick.
yeah, I wanted to kind of expound on that of just, we have the APIs to go further, but also just out of the box, how just clean and semantic our components are. So you really can just, like, I think TJ showed it earlier with the date picker. He threw in our default date picker and started tabbing around, and it went into the component and started selecting items. So that's beautiful. Oh, I was like, where's our date picker? But yes, I like it. I like it a lot. I think our accessibility has stepped up a notch. So.
And I think too, so if anybody else in chat has questions, let me know. But the other thing I want to make sure to get in is that we've talked about a lot about the form components, but there are some just heavy hitter components that I think we mentioned at the beginning of the stream that are almost like full things in and of themselves. So things like the data grid that's part of KendoReact, where there is, I think, like almost like 100 different features that you can do with this thing. There's a lot. And I think like the context here is we're showing KendoReact in the context of building for a hackathon. And there are honestly, we've seen customers and users that have built apps that were basically the grid was the app, because you can actually do you can do paging, editing, sorting, filtering. So if you are building an app that's just around a data set, sometimes like the grid can more or less be your entire application. You can let users export it to Excel, to PDFs. There's a ton that you can do in this. And actually, so I don't know if I have it up, but we're actually going to be doing, as part of this Worthy Web series, later on, an entire session on the grid, just because it's that important. So I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I think like it is so important that I wanted to at least make sure to mention it. So if you're checking out KendoReact for the hackathon, it's definitely like the first component to check out, because it'll probably help you pretty much regardless of what you're building. And I don't know, did we cover that well enough, Alyssa? Is there any other like things that we've missed about Kendo that are like mission critical that people need to know?
No, honestly, I think people just need to know that. I mean, I'm at Alyssa Nicoll on Twitter, and what's your Twitter handle, darling TJ?
At TJ VanToll.
Okay,
So
so we're keeping it simple here.
We keep it simple.
And of course, I'm on the Angular side of life. TJ's on the React side of life. But legit, if you feel more comfortable asking your .NET or what have you questions to us, we will find the answer. So if you're doing the hackathon and you have questions, tweet at us. We're here for you. If we didn't cover a certain topic, we can make sure that gets integrated in the future Worthy Web streams. So
yeah, and especially if you are watching this in the future, if you're watching the recording of this, feel free to reach out if you need help with the hackathon. We're here to help. We want to see you build cool things. It should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for walking me through KendoReact and teaching me some React today, TJ. Sorry for the silly questions, but I honestly love any chance I get to like dive into it.
It's one of the fun things about these streams. So I think as a last thing, like I think we mentioned earlier, follow at Telerik on Twitter and follow at KendoUI on Twitter if you want to be notified of these streams in the future, just because we're doing a few of these around the hackathon. So if you want to learn about some of the other prize categories, oh good, Ivana threw it up one last time within the chat. Just if you want to keep notified, if you want to learn about these other things, because I have fun as well. It's fun to chat.
So if you're like, April's an absolute mess for me, don't worry. The hackathon's going on for, I think it's six weeks, and you can enter the hackathon like at any point during the open period. So you don't have to start right tomorrow when the hackathon starts. That's just when all of the details will be open and available for you to get started. So at any point, join in and ask your questions. We're here for you. So.
All right. Well, thanks, Alyssa. This was fun.
Thanks, TJ.
I'm going to rock out to the countdown music again now, I think.
Oh, thank you everyone in the chat for making it fun.
Yeah.
Bye.
All right. Bye, everyone.